I saw my little inner baby like in the corner, and she was there waiting for somebody, right, to acknowledge her, waiting for someone to validate her. And the validation had to come from me. In this video, I'm going to share with you why shadow work and inner child are good modalities to combine together so that when you are doing your inner child healing, you can do shadow work with it as well. And that is coming up right now. Aloha, beautiful soul. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Rae-Ann Chi, energy alchemist and mindset coach. If you are new to my channel and you want to learn more on how to master your reality, recognize your infinite potential, and manifest greatness through personal growth and spiritual growth, start right now by pressing that subscribe button and also turning on your post notifications so you never miss anything. So with shadow work and inner child healing, why do they go so well together? The reason for this, okay, if you have started your inner child healing journey and you haven't looked into shadow work and vice versa, I personally would suggest that you do both, okay? The reason for this is because with shadow work, and you're having this understanding that a lot of the shadow aspects and a lot of the aspects in the shadow were created in childhood, okay, were suppressed at that time. So it makes sense that when we do both together at the same time almost, it's going to be very, very beneficial for you. The same thing with inner child work, right? With a lot of inner child work healing, you tend to go back to your childhood. And many times when we try to meet these timelines with our childhood, our little girl, our inner baby, is not going to want to communicate, okay? Because that little inner baby, that little inner child was wounded at some point. So for you to go and regress back into that moment in time, it's going to take some time. So when you incorporate shadow work into it, what happens is you now have the understanding, and it's going to be easier for you to have the integration process because you have this understanding of shadow work that it has been repressed and suppressed and denied and disowned. And so when you go back into this inner child of yours, it's going to be easier for you to understand that aspect that was a soul lost or a fragmented piece, okay? And the same thing, okay? So let's go to the other side of the pendulum, is when you go do shadow work and you introduce inner child healing with that, because you have this understanding of your inner child, it's already would seem that you have already addressed situations and issues and concerns in your childhood doing the inner child healing, so that by the time you get to shadow work, it becomes so much easier. And that's why it's shadow work for inner child healing. These two together really, really complement, because one thing to understand too, some people, okay, they just do shadow work and never hear of inner child, or they do inner child healing and feel like there's still something missing and they never do shadow work. And so it's really good, okay? It's a really, really good idea to combine the two and complement the two. And for my personal experience, I found that doing shadow work first, and also if you haven't seen my video, on my video, I talk about how there's a prerequisite, okay? And that is the self-esteem. And I'm going to put that right here. So when you do that, when you do the prerequisite of self-esteem and self-love, okay, which is actually coming up in my upcoming series, I'm going to be talking about self-love and the self-esteem and positive self-talk and all of that in that umbrella. So you're going to want to definitely tune in if this is something that you want to address. So going back to the shadow work piece, okay, there's that prerequisite. So I found in my experience is that doing shadow work with the understanding that, oh, there's a prerequisite, building that self-esteem, okay, and then getting into shadow work. So by the time I got to my inner child, it was so much easier. I was already beginning to integrate these aspects anyway. So by the time I regressed, okay, and by the time I started to go deep into my inner child healing, it was so much easier for these aspects to reveal itself. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, when you regress back and you do inner child healing, okay, there's so many different ways of doing it, but a lot of the ways is to do that. And when you go back, many times your inner child is not going to want to communicate because it has been basically sitting in a corner, okay, for like 20 years. That's very true for me. It was so powerful. I did this one inner child healing that I did, and oh my goodness, oh my gosh. And this is like an accumulation of things that were coming up. And one day I just broke down because I saw my little inner baby like in the corner, and she was there waiting for somebody, right, to acknowledge her, waiting for someone to validate her. And the validation had to come from me. And that piece of myself was there for a long time, for 20 years, right? Imagine. So because I already had been doing the prerequisites to shadow work, and because I already had been doing shadow work, it was so much easier to go to that inner child and have that compassion and bring her in and have the integration process begin. And so that is what I have to say when it comes to shadow work for inner child healing. Hopefully this gave you a better understanding on the two, and for me personally, why I think they are both really good to do together. Or even doing the shadow work first and then giving it about a month and then getting into inner child healing immediately, because they do go hand in hand. Because many of the shadows were in childhood, and it goes back to also self-esteem. A lot of this stuff happens in childhood. So whatever, if it makes sense for you to do the inner child first and then shadow work like a month later, that's great too. But from my experience, and even for my clients who I have worked with, we've done it like this, and it has been so much more powerful that way. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what other videos you'd want to see. I do have one more video coming up for this series of shadow work, and we're going to wrap that up. And then next week, and starting the week after, moving into November, we're going to be working on self-esteem. And I really feel that it's going to be really great too, like moving into Thanksgiving. Hopefully some areas y'all are able to congregate, but a lot of the times with Thanksgiving, I find that it's like you connect with family members like you've never even connected with before. You know what I mean? It's like that once a year, and it brings up a lot of triggers, and it brings up a lot of things that affects your self-esteem and even like worth, right? Because we see these family members and you're like, dang, like, I just find this to be true. Like for me in the past, it felt like that. It was like a lot of things that were coming up in that area. So I feel like this would be a really, really great time to do this series, especially when it comes to the holidays where a lot of family gets together. So that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, I really, really appreciate every single one of you. I appreciate your support. Leave me a comment down below and engage with me if you have any questions whatsoever. Okay, I'll do my best to answer if it's like in my field, all right? But I am active on here, so if you have any questions, leave them down below and I will answer them. And that is all I have for today. Again, like this video if you got value out of it, and I will see you on the next one. Mahalo and aloha.